During Constitution Week, we want to celebrate our heritage, honor our patriots, and preserve the family stories about these patriots that have been passed down by our ancestors. Paul Revere was born on December 21st, 1734, in the north end of Boston, Massachusetts. He came from a very large family, the third of 12. He died on May 10, 1818, after a very eventful life, one that helped pave the way to our independence and the writing of our Constitution. Let's go back in time and listen to Paul and others tell us about one of history's greatest adventures.
I didn't have much of a formal education, so I began working with my father when I was a young man. My father died when I was 19, and that meant that I had to take care of my family's business. I spent the next 20 years learning my trades, and I am proud to say that I became a very famous American goldsmith, was a very famous patriot.
In 1760, I began to get involved with groups that wanted to break away from England. One of these groups was the Sons of Liberty, and the other was called the North End Caucus. This was when I met Samuel Adams and started to serve as a courier for Americans seeking independence from England. I also made engravings to show people what the British were doing to us. One of my most famous engravings was the one showing the Boston Massacre of 1770.
My name is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and I am the poet who helped everyone know what Paul Revere did for our country. I wrote a poem in 1861 that helped people remember what a hero Paul was in our fight for independence. Some of my friends are here too and will read parts of my famous poem.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers the famous day of the year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea, the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the north church tower as a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm for the country folk to be up and to arm.
Meanwhile, impatient to the mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed on the landscape far and near, then in patience he snapped the earth and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of Old North Church.
As it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and sombre and still and low. As he looks on the belfries bright, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, a bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full night on his sight, and a second lamp on the belfry burns.
In the books you have read how the British regulars fired and fled from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load.
Night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore.
For born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness, the peril and need, the people will awaken and listen to hear the hurrying, hoofing beats of that steed in the midnight message of Paul Revere.
Well, the plan worked out But as everyone knows, Mr. Longfellow gave me all the credit, and there was actually 2 other riders. William and I were stopped on our way to Concord, but Samuel Prescott was able to finish the ride all the way to Concord and get the word to our troops that the British were coming by sea. Even though Mr. Longfellow made me famous, I want to be sure that my friends William and Samuel get equal credit for that night.
You can see what these patriots accomplished took teamwork and the cooperation of many people. Americans in the future call them heroes, but at the time they were simply patriots fighting for their country's freedom. They were a part of making our nation's independence possible, and with that independence came the greatest accomplishment of all, the Constitution of the United States of America.